Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 6th episode of the story where there are so many things that we as humans are unaware of, or lack an understanding. The bijou are one of those things. Follow the journey of Naruto Uzumaki as he befriends the yokai that was sealed inside of him and, she, helps him grow stronger. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. Anko Mitarashi walked down the streets of Konoha, twirling a kunai in one hand and holding a stick of dango that she was munching on with the other. There was a rather large grin on her face, and everyone who knew her, which was everyone in Konoha given her reputation, that saw the grin was sent scurrying for cover. Most wondered who the poor bastard that she had just finished torturing was. Fortunately for said poor bastard, and everyone else, Anko wasn't interested in torturing others at the moment as she was on her way to an important meeting. She had just been called by the Hokage via Tenzo, the cat-masked ANBU who worked as the Hokage's personal bodyguard. She wasn't sure what to expect, but the Hokage had never actually called in for anything unless it was of the utmost importance. Maybe he's planning on giving me an S-rank mission. It was a nice thought. She hadn't gone on too many of those. Most S ranks were reserved for the ANBU due to how dangerous they were. The only two regular jonin who ever took S rank missions nowadays were Kakashi Hatake and Mato Guy. Well, Guy had before he got his genin squad. Whatever the case, she hoped his reasons for calling her would be exciting. She marched up a set of stairs in the Hokage mansion, down a corridor and made her way into a small reception area. Anko walked up to the secretary who soon noticed her. "Ah, my Trashisan, Hokage-sama is expecting you. Go right in." "Thanks." Anko said cheerfully. She had always liked this girl. The secretary was one of the few people who didn't treat her like she had the plague. Marching up to the doors, a large grin worked its way onto her face before she made an entrance that only her and one other person could possibly pull off. Kicking the door in, Anko stalked further into the room, stopped in front of the Hokage's desk and struck a dramatic pose, hands on her hips, head held high and a dango stick in her mouth. "You called Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi sighed, and for just a moment he wondered if he was making the right decision here. "Yes," he said, "right choice for the job or not, she was the only one he could trust with this mission. I have an important, long-term mission for you. It's vital to the continued survival of Konoha and you're the only person I can trust." Anko's eyes widened before her grin was going full force, so powerful and bright was this grin that Mato Guy would be blinded by its majesty and youth. Finally, she was getting the recognition she deserved. The Hokage had deemed to give her a mission that was vital to the continued survival of Konoha, which sounded pretty damn important. She could see it all now. Her completing this mission and saving the village, then she would get free dango for life. "I accept," she shouted. "You don't even know what the mission is," Sarutobi stated, somewhat amused by the Tokubetsu Jonin's antics. The woman was as impulsive as Naruto was, or at least as impulsive as the Naruto Konoha had come to know. It would be interesting to see how she dealt with them. "Doesn't matter, I said I'll take it, so that means I'll take it," Anko said dismissively. She wasn't really paying attention to the old man, already visualizing being given a lifetime supply of free dango and having a statue of her made in the village marketing district. Sarutobi actual sweat dropped at seeing his ninja with stars in her eyes and drool pouring out of her mouth by the bucket loads. "Very well," Sarutobi grabbed a scroll, one he had just recently made, and tossed it to her. Anko caught the scroll and unrolled it. Her eyes began to scan the contents. It was almost amusing to watch the changes that went across the woman's face. The happy grin she had on when first arriving left after reading the first line. The further she went down, the more her face changed. At first it paled, and an expression of horror crossed her face. Afterwards it went blank, like there was nothing going on in her head at the time and her brain decided to take a vacation. Finally it settled on red, a sign that she was angry. The tick marks that were popping up on her forehead added to the expression. "What kind of mission is this? Story of the 10-tailed wolf, is something wrong, Narukin?" asked Akane as Naruto's head turned to look out into nothing. His ears wiggled slightly on his head, as if he were hearing something, and Akane had to force herself not reach out and pet them. "No," he said at last, "just thought I heard something is all." Naruto turned back to look at her. "So what are we doing first?" "First, we need to see what your control is like," Akane said, "seeing as how you're no longer using chakra, but Yuki, which is many times stronger than chakra, your control is likely shot. Adding on to that, you now have 10 taels worth of Yuki, meaning your control is going to be hell until we can fix it." She paused to let that information sink in. "Now I want you to use a jutsu, I don't care which, I just need to see how your control is so I know which exercise to start you on." "Got it." Naruto began to run through a gauntlet of hand seals, ending on the dragon seal. His cheek swelled with air and he soon released it in a burst of wind. At least, that's what would have normally happened. Instead of creating a burst of wind with enough power to rip several trees up from their roots, a large shock wave emitted from his mouth and Naruto was blown back several meters. He smacked into the ground harshly and rolled out of the training field, only coming to a stop when he was a good 3 meters out of the training ground. "Guh," Naruto groaned as he pushed himself up into a sitting position. Blinking, he looked around and shook his head to try and get the blurriness out of his vision. Standing up, Naruto made his way back over to Akane, who was on the ground, holding her gut and laughing at him. Naruto growled angrily as he stomped up to her, "Stop laughing. It's not funny." Yes it is, ha ha ha." "It is too funny," Akane guffawed, not even bothering to stop laughing as she felt her lungs beginning to burn from a lack of oxygen. Another growl issued itself from Naruto's throat and he bounced, jumping on top of the red-haired vixen in an effort to pin her down. All of his efforts were in vain, however, as Akane's legs came around and wrapped and she bent her legs over his body so she could place her heels on his chest, then she pushed, taking him down and bringing herself up so that she was sitting on him. "You'll have to do better than that, Narukin," she said, leaning down until their noses were touching. Naruto leaned in the rest of the way, bringing his lips to hers. His arms moved and secured themselves around her waist, pulling her closer until their bodies were flush against each other. He enjoyed the feel of Akane's chest pressing against his, and the way her legs sensually glided across his own. Opening his mouth, he invited Akane in and closed it when her tongue penetrated him orally. He listened to her moan as he sucked on her tongue and rolled them over so that he was once again on top. It was a disappointed to them both when he ended the kiss. "We should probably get back to training." "Yeah." Akane sighed. She knew they should be training, but it was just so hard to resist jumping her mate. It was especially difficult when she was put into a situation like now. Naruto moved off of her and stood up, holding a hand out to help her up. She accepted it and the whiskered blonde pulled her up. "So did you get all of the info on my control that you need? Because I really don't want to have to go through that again." Akane giggled. "Don't worry, I've got all I need." A thoughtful look crossed her face as she thought of the best way to put what she wanted to say into words. "I was right when I said your control is shot. When you used that jutsu, it should have compressed in your throat and then been pushed out in a way that created a powerful gust of wind. Instead, what happened was that your Yuki couldn't compress itself and released it in a shock wave that backfired on you. This means that your control is about as bad as it could possibly get. In other words, we need to start from scratch to bring it back up." "Great," Naruto sighed. It totally sucked that his control was pretty much gone. One of the many things Akane had him do during the last 7 years was work on his chakra control, and now all of that work has gone to waste. "It's not so bad," Akane chided him, placing a hand on his cheek. "You still have the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and that doesn't actually require control, just a crap load of power, which you now have in spades. Now, the exercise I'm going to have you do is a demon exercise that I created in order to control my own Yuki. It's a step control exercise. Basically, what you have to do is take a rock, a decent-sized one, and float it over the palm of your hand." Akane picked up a small pebble and floated it over her palm. "This is the first step. The step's getting progressively harder and harder as you go. For instance, the second step is to rotate the rock in a horizontal spin, the third is to add a vertical spin. When that is complete, you'll use rocks that get smaller and smaller until you can float a pebble. Afterwards, we'll add a rock to your other hand so that you're doing 2 at a time, then we'll begin adding rocks to your fingers. The exercise is completed when you can float and spin 12 pebbles on your hands. After having listened to her intently, Naruto had only one thing to say, well shit. Such an eloquent way of putting it, Akane smirked. Now make your Kage Bunshin and get them started on this exercise. We have some things the two of us need to do. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Hokage-sama, you can't be serious. This is a joke, right? When Anko saw the look on Sarutobi's face, her own began to pale, right? No, Anko-san, I am not joking, Sarutobi said. I want you to be the Jonin for one Naruto Uzumaki and a new graduate who I personally passed. He partly wondered if it would be beneficial to tell Anko about the other student actually being the Kyuubi, but had decided against it. This kind of information wasn't something that could get out without serious repercussions, and while he trusted Anko with his life, he knew that the less people who knew about Akane's true origins the better. But, why do I have to train a couple of brats? Asked Anko. She knew about who he wanted her to train. She had seen him around the village, usually with a group of ANBU on his tail. Hell, she would even admit that she enjoyed his antics and some of the pranks he had played around the village. The purple-haired Tokubetsu Jonin even felt a certain amount of kinship with Naruto because of how he was treated. But she had no interest in training the brat, or any brat. Are you telling me that you are refusing a mission I am personally giving? Asked Sarutobi. A mission that you just said you would take? Didn't you tell me you would take this mission? No, I mean, yes. Anko stuttered, her eyes wide as the wily Hokage played her own words against her. But I have no desire to train some punk, and you know the council will never accept this. The civilian council had never liked Anko, and had made it a point to try and make her life hard by speaking with the owners of shops and several of Konoha's citizens into treating her like crap. It wasn't until she began to fight back, cutting people up and sicking her snakes on them, that the citizenry stopped messing with her. The council has no say in what I do with my shinobi, he emphasized my, reminding Anko that he was the Hokage. The council could make things difficult for him, scheduling meetings that had no real purpose, controlling the shops and stores to not allow Naruto access, and they had even gone so far as to leak the boy's status as the Kyuubi's container. In the hopes it would incite hatred against the boy to keep him weak, though the man who had spread the rumor was now dead. However, while they could do all of that, Sarutobi was still Hokage, and the village of Konoha was still a military village where he was the dictator. Yes, Hokage-sama, Anko said, more for lack of wanting to say something, than actually having anything to say. So will you accept my mission? Anko sighed and her shoulders slumped. Yeah, I'll train the brats. Sarutobi chuckled, now don't be like that. I'll think you'll enjoy teaching these two. Why are you only giving me 2 people, Hokage-sama? Asked Anko, suddenly curious about that. I mean, genin squads always consist of 3 genin and their jonin sensei. I know that the Uzumaki Gaki is special and all, but I don't see why you're doing this. That would be because of Akane, the girl I tested, Sarutobi said, as if Akane needed a test. Being the Kyuubi, she was more powerful than he ever would be. She was able to prove herself to be quite talented, and I decided it would be beneficial if she graduated. The fact that she seems to be friends with Naruto-kun is a bonus. Also, it seems little Naruto-kun is not all that he seems. Reaching into his desk, the old Hokage pulled out a file and handed it over to a curious Anko. Or it would be more accurate to say that, Naruto-kun is much more than he seems. Anko opened the file and began scanning over the contents. She knew immediately what it was. The genin scores for Naruto Uzumaki, and what she saw shocked her. This can't be right, she said, there's no way. Everyone knows the Gaki is the worst in his class. How is it that he has the highest score to have come out of the academy in over 2 decades? As I said, he is much more than he seems, Sarutobi said. In fact, I am not even sure just how strong he is. Irukakin told me that Naruto blew over the exam like he wasn't even trying, and while the academy exam is not quite as difficult as it was during wartime status, it is still impressive. Naruto-kun may easily be the strongest genin to ever come out of the academy. In fact, Sarutobi was sure that the boy was far more powerful than any of the ninja under his command. He had felt the aura of power that was wrapped around the blonde like a cloak when they had met just yesterday. What about this other girl? Akane, asked Enko. There is not much on her, Sarutobi admitted, we have not even been able to find out her surname. However, she came to Konoha a little over a year ago and apparently befriended Naruto-kun in that time. Though they managed to keep it a secret. I did learn that her father was a jonin from Kiri before he had been killed sometime during the start of the Kiri Civil War. How she made it here to Hai no Kuni on her own is anyone's guess, but he did teach her things before he died, and I suspect that she has been teaching Naruto-kun. So she's good? Enko asked. Very. Well, maybe this will be a little more interesting than I first thought, Enko admitted. But they still need to pass my test. Of course, Sarutobi smirked, though I doubt you'll have to worry about that. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto Uzumaki spent the week before they received their Jonin sensei training with Akane in his chakra control. Thanks to his new Bijou level reserves, a name he had jokingly called them even though it was now true, the young blonde was able to make upwards of 10,000 clones easily and not even feel winded. This had made it possible for him to complete the chakra control exercises that Akane made his clones work on very quickly. Interested in testing out the capabilities of his new body, Naruto had tested his physical prowess with a series of challenging exercises. He had discovered that every aspect of his body had been enhanced to levels that would make any jonin worth their salt with themselves. His speed, physical strength, reflexes and reaction times, dexterity, constitution and hand-to-eye coordination were all off the charts. Akane had told him that because he was a Hanyu his body was now as close to physically perfect as it could get. In other words, he was at the physical peak of his ability and unlikely to gain any more strength. Not that he needed any more strength. Likewise, Naruto had tested out his enhanced senses, having noticed they had taken a rather sharp rise in power. Everything he looked at was now crystal clear, his eyesight was better than any humans could ever hope to be. He could see everything for up to 5 miles as clear as day. His sense of smell was also very good, so good in fact that Naruto had been forced to plug his nose for the first few days he began testing it. Naruto's sense of hearing was now through the roof. Akane told him that he could probably hear even better than the Inuzuka Nin dogs. Likewise, taste and touch were also sharper than ever before. This was a bit annoying because some of his food now tasted so strongly that he had trouble eating it, though he loved his enhanced sense of touch for obvious reasons. Because his senses and physical ability were so strong and at the moment he lacked proper control over them, Naruto had created a seal on the inside of his forehead protector to seal up his abilities and bring it down to manageable levels. At least until he could properly control them. After all of the training Naruto had done, it was nearing the end of the week. Next Monday was the day they would get assigned their Jonin sensei. I wonder who Ajisen picked for us. The blonde wondered as he ran a hand over Akane's sweaty torso and hips. They had just got finished making love, an act the two took great pleasure in doing every night. Akane had situated herself on top of him this time, laying on her side and sensually spread out on him with her legs tangled in his. They weren't using the blanket, Naruto had instead wrapped his tails around them to cover the two of them up. Shrugging off any thoughts on Jonin senseis and his graduation for later, Naruto went to sleep as well. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It was the day of graduation and all of the Tsuntabejinin were chattering away excitedly about their careers. Some were talking about how exciting it was that they were now ninja, others were boasting about how awesome they were going to be, and still others attempting to act cool so they didn't ruin their "I'm a complete BMF, badass motherfucker" image. The clan heirs were no different than the civilians in this case, Kiba was boasting to anyone who listened that he would become a jonin in less than a year. Ino was chatting with some girls about the particulars of the new Naruto fan club, Shino was sitting and observing the class, Shikamaru was sleeping, Choji was eating, Sasuke was brooding and Hinata was doing her turtle imitation. It was a day of promise for these 27 academy graduates, a day that they would remember for all time as the day they became adults. This was the scene that Naruto walked into. The moment he stepped through the door and walked in, with Akane on his arm, all conversation seemed to grind to a screeching halt. Even Shikamaru had woken up to look at them and mutter a quick, troublesome, before going back to sleep. As they walked further in, Naruto almost chuckled at seeing the jealous looks on the faces of the girls who had decided he had become their newest obsession. And he actually growled at one of the kids he saw drooling over his Akane, blasting the poor boy with so much killing intent he shit himself and passed out. The two were about to make their way to a seat in the back left-hand corner when a head of pink hair moved in their way. Can I help you, Haruno?" asked Naruto curiously, tilting his head. He didn't really like this girl, aside from the fact that she would often abuse his poor Chishio Bunshin, she was also a very loud and obnoxious fangirl. However, Sakura wasn't even looking at him, her eyes were solely focused on the beauty in front of her. She just knew this girl was after her Sasuke-kun. Why else would someone so beautiful be here? The poor girl completely ignored the fact that Akane was on Naruto's arm. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded to know. Akane gave her a lazy look. "Who I am is none of your damn business, Pinky. All you need to know is that I'm here for my genin emplacement." She had never liked this girl. Sakura Haruno was the rabid fan girl type who spent more time dieting, washing their hair and stalking the supposed love of their life than training. They believed that their knight in brooding armor would rescue them if they were ever in trouble. It was girls like these that were always the first to die in the field. The two demonic genin made to quickly move past Sakura, but the girl would have none of it. "Don't lie to me. I know you're after my Sasuke-kun," the pink-haired howler monkey made to grab Akane's shoulder. However, before she could do anything, Akane turned and gave her forehead a finger flick. Sakura was sent flying backwards and smacked into the wall, cracking it. Everyone stared from Sakura to Akane in shock. Said girl just looked at the Naruto fan club and gave them a fanged grin, causing many to pale. A few of them had been plotting ways to get rid of the pretty new girl so they could get Naruto-kun, but if she could do that then they really didn't want to piss her off. "Hey Naruto! Who's the babe?" asked Kiba, shouting from the back row. The blonde genin looked up at Kiba to see him drooling at his mate. He was tempted to blast the kid with killing intent but decided not to. Kiba was just naturally a lecher, he guessed it was in his nature, what with being so close to dogs and all. Besides that, if Naruto killed everyone who drooled over his mate, well, there wouldn't be any men left in this world. I suppose introductions are in order," Naruto murmured. "This is Akane-kan, she's my mate." The reaction to that statement was pretty comical. Choji dropped his bag of potato chips and began choking on the few chips in his mouth. Shino focused his attention on the red head. Kiba looked shocked and jealous. The newly minted fan club looked like they had just been kicked. Hinata became depressed and hid even further in her jacket. Shikamaru didn't even bother waking up to hear the announcement, and Sasuke. "I demand you teach me how you did that." "There we go." Akane looked at Sasuke and snarled at him, making the raven-haired boy actually take a step back. "Do not presume to think that I will teach you just because you're an Uchiha, brat. You're just like every other member of your clan, believing that they were Kami-sama's gift to man." Akane smirked as Sasuke became more enraged. "The only good Uchiha is a dead Uchiha. I would shake Itachi's hand if I saw him for helping rid the world of an arrogant stain like your family." By this point Sasuke was shaking with apoplectic rage. How dare this bitch say these things? The Uchiha had always been one of the most elite clans of the village, their bloodline was the best. And this whore was insulting his clan. Even worse, she had the gall to say she would like to thank Itachi for killing them. "You bitch." Sasuke Uchiha ran straight at Akane, getting ready to put this bitch in her place. The only problem he ran into, aside from the fact that if he actually got near Akane she would kill him, was Naruto. Said whisker-marked blonde had appeared right in front of Sasuke and smashed into him with a solid uppercut. From the moment Sasuke received the hit to his jaw he had blacked out. It was probably a good thing for him because the raven-haired genin went sailing through the air in an almost lazy arch, right before he smacked down onto one of the desks, breaking it and then falling to the floor. Naruto ignored the looks he was getting as he turned to Akane and grinned, "I've always wanted to do that." Akane rolled her eyes before grabbing Naruto's hand and pulling him to a desk in the back. Said desk was set against the wall so Naruto could lean against it. Seconds later Akane climbed onto the desk and situated herself between his legs and leaned against him. The two of them proceeded to ignore everyone else as Naruto pulled a little orange book from one of his pouches, wrapped his arms around Akane's waist, set his head on her shoulder, leaning lightly against her so he was nuzzling the redhead's cheek and then opened the book and situated it so they could both read. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Well, what do you all think? Within the Hokage's office 12 people stood around a small orb that was showing the newly graduated academy students. The entire crowd had just gotten done watching Sasuke get popped one in the face and knocked out cold. "The kid's got guts," said a man with a cigarette in his mouth. Asuma Sarutobi had brown eyes, short black spiky hair and a beard. His clothing consisted of the standard Konoha ninja uniform with the sleeves rolled up. He also wore a flak jacket, regular shinobi sandals and forehead protector. He also wore the 12 Ninja Guardians sash around his waist with the kanji for fire marked on it, a bracelet on both of his wrists and bandages on both arms of his outfit. I don't think I've ever seen a genin deck anyone that hard before. I wonder, who's the girl he's with? Kurenai Yuhi was what many men in Konoha considered a perfect woman. She was a kunoichi with long and black, shoulder-length untamed hair, and very unique eyes that were red in color, with an additional ring in them similar to the legendary Dojutsu the Renijin, albeit less ripples. She was wearing makeup that consisted of red lipstick and purple eyeshadow. Her regular outfit consisted of a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible. Over that was a very broad material which resembled bandages with a pattern on it similar to those of rose thorns. Her hands and upper thighs were also wrapped in bandages and she wore the Konoha forehead protector and regular shinobi sandals. "That's Akane-san," Sarutobi said. "She came to the village a few years ago and has apparently been living with Naruto-kun since then." "If that's true, how come we haven't heard of her?" asked a ninja who wore a very lazy expression. He had on the standard jonin outfit, long-sleeve blue shirt with red uzumaki swirls on the shoulders, blue pants, a green shinobi flak jacket, blue shinobi sandals and a forehead protector that was slanted over his left eye. He was also wearing a pair of gloves with metal plates, and a face mask that covered half of his face. He was very tall and lanky, making him look like a scarecrow, and had tall, gravity-defying silver hair. "That's because she has some basic shinobi training, including very good stealth training," Sarutobi stated. Her father was a jonin from Kiri, who taught her before being killed at the start of the civil war in Kiri. I don't know what happened to her mother but after that she started traveling and eventually ended up here. Neither Naruto-kun nor Akane-san will tell me how they met, but Akane-san said that after seeing the way this village treated Naruto-kun they both decided it was best if she stayed in the shadows. Many of the shinobi inside of the room winced. One did not get to be a jonin by being stupid and so every jonin knew well and good why Naruto was hated, as well as that he was not the fox sealed inside of him and the boy was being hated for no reason. Despite this, none of them had ever felt the need to help when he was in trouble. "Is that why you're letting her graduate without having gone through the academy?" asked Kurenai. "She and Naruto came to me with a proposal that I felt was too tempting to refuse," Sarutobi said in a voice that made it clear he would not discuss anything else with them. "Now, why don't we continue watching?" Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Naruto and Akane ignored the way everyone continued to stare at the two of them as they sat on the table and continued to read. "You know, I really think the position on page 34, it has some real potential," Naruto spoke using the mind link they shared. During the week before, the blonde had discovered that the reason he and Akane still shared thoughts was because the Shiki Fujin overseal had been modified to accommodate for her body no longer being sealed inside of him when the red head had been sucked out. Though he was still working on figuring just why she was sucked out in the first place. "It's not bad, but my favorite is page 8 and 11, Akane said, but 19 is an interesting one as well. It might seem odd to some people why these two were reading the book known as Ika Ika Paradise, a porn book filled with lewd images and sex scenes. The two had happened upon it during one of their shopping excursions in the past week, and after reading the first few pages had decided to buy the set for their own recreational purposes. It was while they were reading that a loud wail of Sasuke-kun brought their attention away from their book. "You!" Sakura screeched as she stomped over to the pair of demonic ninja. She had an angry expression on her face and the kind of righteous fury most fangirls get in their eyes when something happens to the love of their life. To most people the girl would be rather frightening. To Naruto and Akane the girl was about as frightening as Grubworm. "What do you want, Pinky?" said Akane, "can't you see Naruto and I are busy reading? What did you do to my Sasuke-kun?" "You assumed we did anything," Akane said, "perhaps he just likes lying on the floor. It is the proper place for an Uchiha to be anyways." This statement caused many of the Konoha genin to show surprise, since the Uchiha clan had been one of the elite clans of the village. For someone to insult them as much as Akane was unheard of. Especially now that they were dead. "How dare you do this to my Sasuke-kun?" Sakura shrieked. "Could you keep it down, Haruno?" asked Naruto in an annoyed voice, "we're trying to read here." The pink-haired girl recoiled in shock for a moment, as if just hearing him call her Haruno for the first time. However, her shock was quickly overcome and replaced by anger. "Read! Read! My Sasuke-kun unconscious on the floor." Sakura yelled at Naruto before whirling on Akane, "What did you do to him? First she thinks I'm after the idiot and now she thinks I did something," Akane grumbled as she leaned her head back so she could look at Naruto. "Does this girl have some kind of mental issues?" As Sakura bristled at the insulting question, Naruto just shrugged, "You know, I've always wondered that myself. I believe she has too, fangirlism, and howler monkey syndrome." Akane snapped her fingers and gained a eureka sort of expression on her face. "That explains it." While Naruto and Akane were insulting and making fun of Sakura, many of the students in the class were watching the scene with something akin to shock. By now everyone had more or less realized that Naruto might not be as dumb as they all thought. The fact that he did so well on the exams and beat the crap out of Mizuki yesterday proved that. But they had all thought that was the end of the surprises Naruto had for them, and now he brought the hottest girl they had ever seen, claimed she was his mate, punched the Uchiha in the face hard enough to send him flying. The fact that he was not defending his Sakura-kun and was in fact helping his mate insult the girl they all thought he liked was just the icing on the cake. In many ways the word shocking didn't begin to describe how many of the students felt. This was the scene Iruka walked into. He was extremely tired thanks to all the work he had to do the past week. A few nights ago, Mizuki had tried to steal the forbidden scroll of sealing and got caught. That had essentially doubled the amount of paperwork Iruka had to do since he had no assistant to help him. On top of that, Naruto's exam had caused a lot of problems. Many on the civilian council had managed to somehow get their hands on his report, hearing that the demon had managed to not only pass but got the highest graduation exam score since Itachi Uchiha and Minato Namikaze had caused an uproar in the council chambers. This had caused Iruka even more problems because the council had pulled him into an impromptu meeting to more or less interrogate him. And now he was standing here, looking at the scene before him with several tick marks on his head. "Sit down and shut up, you brats." Sakura, who was really the only one being loud, since everyone else had just decided to watch the prime entertainment that was Naruto and Akane insulting the pink-haired girl, scurried to her seat. "Good. Now could someone please wake Sasuke up? He shouldn't be sleeping on the floor." It was obvious that someone had knocked him out, but Iruka really didn't want to deal with these kids anymore. As far as he was concerned, the sooner he just got this over with the better, and Naruto, you and the new girl have to sit in an actual seat. Fine, whatever. Both Naruto and Akane grumbled about prudish senseis making Iruka gain several tick marks on his head. They sat down in the bench-like seats, though Akane sat sideways so that she could rest her legs across his lap and her head on his shoulder. Iruka just gave an annoyed grunt, feeling it was best to just ignore Naruto since he knew that there wasn't much he could do or say to convince the blonde or his mate to do anything more than what he just asked. He had already received a report from Sandim-sama warning him that it would be hazardous to his health if he were to attempt to separate them. One of the random civilian students woke up Sasuke, who was thankfully so groggy and disoriented that all he could do was sit down at his desk. Sighing in relief, Iruka began his end-of-the-year speech. As of today you are all ninja, to get here you've faced difficult trials and hardships. But that's nothing, what comes next will be far more difficult. Now you are only genin, first-level ninja, the lowest class of ninja. All genin will be grouped into 3-man squads, each squad will be led by a jonin, an elite ninja. I really wish Iruka sensei would just get to who our jonin sensei is, Naruto grumbled. Well, you know how long-winded Dolphin-san can be, Akane said. I remember reviewing some of the memories from your Chishio Bunshin, the man's speeches were pretty archaic and boring. Personally, I think he just likes to hear the sound of his own voice. Heh, so true. All of the other genin were also wondering who they were going to have for their squad. Well, most of them were. Shikamaru just thought the whole thing was troublesome, Choji was too busy eating to pay too much attention. Sasuke, who by now had recovered and gone back to his brooding, felt that a squad of 3 would only slow him down. The others were all varied in their thoughts. Shino was trying to figure out who he would work with best, Kiba wanted to be with anyone that was a hot girl, Hinata and the other girls wanted to be with Naruto, though they did not want to be with Akane. Said 2 Demon Shinobi already knew who their squad consisted of, minus their Jonin sensei. We want each squad to have a balance of strengths and abilities, so that's how we set them up. Iruka looked at the paper in his hand. I will now announce the squads. Squad 1. As the squads were announced, Naruto stopped paying attention and let his mind wander to something more pleasant than who the other teams consisted of. That pleasant something being Akane. Letting his hands wander over her legs, Naruto lightly kneaded her thighs. If you keep doing that I may have to jump you in class, Akane purred in his mind. Naruto just smiled as he let his hand glide across her silken legs until they came to a stop at her moist center. He pressed 2 fingers against the cloth of her shorts and began to rub her lips through the fabric. Akane shivered and had to bite her lower lip to keep from crying out her pleasure. She knew what Naruto was doing and vowed to get back at him when he least expected it. And now, for Team 12, Naruto's ears perked up. Naruto Uzumaki, Akane Uzumaki. Many girls became even more depressed when they heard that. Not only was that red-haired slut on his team, but she had taken Naruto's last name for her own. How could they compete with that? Your Jonin sensei will be Enko Mitarashi. But wait, sensei, interrupted Sakura, I thought that all squads had 3 genin to 1 jonin. If so, then how come that squad just has those 2? Because those 2 happen to pass with the highest scores, said Iruka, causing a murmur in the classroom. Hokage-sama himself tested Akane-san. As for why they only have 2 genin on their squad, that's because of the imbalance Akane-san's presence has created. Before, there were only 27 of you, enough for exactly 9 teams. However, with Akane being added to the roster it presented the problem of imbalance. We were only able to pull Sai-san over there from another class as no one else had the necessary skills to pass the graduation exams. Everyone turned to look at Sai, who had plastered a fake smile on his face. The kid actually sort of resembled Sasuke, with the pale skin, black hair and dark eyes. The main difference being only that creepy fake smile he wore and the fact that his hair didn't look like the back end of a duck's ass. He was wearing a casual outfit consisting of a black shirt with a high collar, matching black pants, and regular shinobi sandals. For whatever reason he wasn't wear his forehead protector or gloves with this outfit. That left one team who would only get 2, and since these 2 have scored the highest grade since, well, in a while, they're the ones who we chose to have a 2-man squad until we can find them another member, Irika coughed, not wanting to say Itachi's name in front of Sasuke. Now, if none of you have any more questions then Irika was interrupted when the window shattered and a black ball of cloth flew in. It unfurled and showed a large banner that became hung in the middle of the room by 2 kunai on each side and stuck into the walls. The banner read, "The single and incredibly sexy, Enko Mitarashi" on it for all to see. That was when said trench coat-clad kunoichi stepped into view. "Alright kiddies. I'm the Jonin Sensei for Team 12, I suggest if you don't want me to shove my foot off your ass then you need to get over here now." Enko shouted while pumping a fist into the air. All of the girls in the class sweat dropped while at the same time wondering who this slut was. The guys on the other hand were all drooling and several had blood dripping down their nose. "Enko-san, you're an hour early," Irika said, his right eye twitching. "The Jonin senseis aren't supposed to come over here to pick up their new genin until 1 o'clock. "Really?" Enko put a hand behind her head and laughed sheepishly. "Well, whatever, I think this will be better anyways. So where are my brats?" Looks like the old man really came through. Enko turned to see both Naruto and Akane right next to her and nearly jumped back in shock. It was only her experience that kept her from showing any surprise at how fast the 2 had moved. The red head was circling around Enko and had a calculating look on her face as she eyed the Jonin up and down. Finally she stopped in front of the purple-haired woman, turned to Naruto, and grinned. "I like her," she decided, getting Naruto to chuckle while Enko just looked confused. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with her state of dress," Naruto teased, "I think you're just pleased to see someone who has, somewhat similar taste in clothes." Akane childishly stuck her tongue out at him. While they began teasing each other with inane comments, Enko was blinking at them owlishly. However she soon began to get a tick mark on her head as they continued to ignore her. "Hey you brats, quite ignoring me," she shouted, causing the blonde and the redhead to stop talking and turn to her. "Now that I have your attention, follow me, and try to make sure you can keep up." She turned and jumped out of the window. Naruto and Akane looked at each other, shrugged, and then blurred out of existence in a burst of speed. The moment Enko had left the academy building and jumped over the fence she took to the rooftops. Looking behind her she saw that both her new students were already hot on her trail. "Good," she thought to herself, "at least I know they're not useless." Deciding to test them some more the purple-haired Jonin sped up, pumping chakra into her legs as she made her way out of the village proper and into the training fields. Taking to the trees she put on another burst of speed and began to create a random path as she made her way to one of the training grounds. Enko only stopped when she got to training ground 43, a training ground that was right next to her favorite one that she had been forbidden from using in her test. She stopped on a tree branch and looked behind her to see if her students had managed to follow her. As she was doing this a voice spoke directly in her ear, "Who are we looking for, Enko-sensei?" "Ga." Enko spun around, kunai in hand only to stop when she saw Naruto and Akane standing there grinning at her. She flicked the kunai back into her wrist and tried to regain her composure. "Not bad, I'm impressed you brats can keep up with me." The 2 gave each other an amused look but by now Enko was ignoring them as she went into her spiel. "Okay. So this is normally the part where we would introduce ourselves, however we're not going to do that. I already know your names and you should know my name. We'll get plenty of chances to learn more about each other later. That is, if you pass my test." "Test?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Yep." Enko smirked at them. "You didn't think that the test they gave you was the real test, did you?" "It was pretty easy," Naruto admitted, "I had been wondering about that." "So am I to take it that the test we took was just to see if we were actually capable of being genin, and the one you're going to give us is the actual genin test?" "Got it in one gaki," Enko praised. "So what is this test?" asked Akane. Anko grinned at them. "You two will have to locate me and then battle me into submission. The only way I'll even consider you my students if you can beat me, because there is no way in hell I'm going to be stuck doing D-rank missions. I suggest that you two come at me with the intention to kill, otherwise you'll have no chance of winning." As the two watched Anko dissolve into mud, Akane turned to Naruto. "Did you do it?" "Of course," Naruto smirked. "I planted the seal on her the moment she stopped running. She's about 20 meters from us, south-southeast." Shock and awe. Shock and awe. Shock and awe was the name that Akane had given to Naruto's general fighting style. She had given it that title when he had been fighting in the civil war in Kirigakure, due to how destructive many of his jutsu were. They tended to surprise his opponents by their sheer destructive capabilities. Sometimes he had even gotten enemy ninja to surrender simply by being on the battlefield once rumor about his overpowered jutsu had spread. It was a style that had served him well in the past, and so Naruto decided to use it when he felt he had a distinct advantage or his opponent was underestimating him, like Anko was doing now. The two looked at each other and vanished in a blur. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Anko looked around the tree she was hiding near. It had been 5 minutes and neither Naruto nor Akane had found her. She wondered where they could be. Sarutobi had warned her that the two were not what they seemed and to take them very seriously. She had of course listened with half an ear and then decided to do her own thing. I mean, how powerful can two newly minted genin be? Katan, Karyu Enden. Anko's eyes widened as voice shouted behind and slightly above her. She had just enough to jump away from the tree she was hiding in order to avoid the large fire dragon attack, letting it smash into the tree. There was a large explosion and shower of burning wood chips as the tree became less of a tree and more of a stump. Anko's eyes widened at the power of the jutsu. What kind of 12-year-old kid had that power? She didn't get a chance to do more than think that question as Naruto appeared in front of her. Wide-eyed, Anko dodged the punch he sent towards her head, bending her body backwards in ways that were reminiscent of a snake. Thanks to her body being more or less parallel with the ground, Anko was now able to see Akane dive bombing her with a foot that looked like it was on fire. Yes, it was on fire. Not only was it on fire, but the flames were a brilliant white that seemed to burn the retina just from looking at them. "What the hell?" the purple-haired Jonin shouted as she rolled out of the way. Just in time too, the moment Akane's foot hit the ground it created a concentrated blast of fire that left a crater with an oddly smooth surface. Looking up, the redhead smirked at Anko, causing said woman to growl. "You know you have more than one opponent, sensei." Anko's eyes went wide as she turned around and was just in time to dodge a lightning-fast strike that would have hit her thyroid cartilage. She twisted her body around to dodge the attack while at the same time trying to strike back with an hand that was reminiscent of a snake, and just as quick. However, Naruto was more than up to the task of dodging and tilted his head to the side, spinning around as he brought his arm up and grabbed her wrist. Smirking, the whiskered blonde pulled on the wrist in his grasp, knocking Anko off balance as she stumbled towards him. Crouching down, he aimed a strike under her arm for the joint that connected her arm to her body. Luckily for Anko, she was able to dislocate her joint and dodge the blow. At the same time she twisted her wrist out of his grasp and jumped back. Damn, the old man was right, Anko thought to herself. These two really were good, she may actually have to take this seriously. Akane went through several hand seals, while she had only just started using jutsu this week. Thanks to her reserves being so much smaller than they used to be, she had more than enough knowledge on them thanks to the times she had seen them in battle and Naruto's training. Katan, Gokyaku no Jutsu. Akane shot out a large fireball from her mouth, forcing Anko to jump away as it crashed into the ground and exploded on contact. Sanaijishu, Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. Anko thrust out her hands and 4 snakes shot from each sleeve. Each group went after one of the 2 demonic ninja. The 4 that went after Akane were simply burned to a crisp as she shot out a smaller and somewhat less lethal version of the Kitsune Bai. However, Naruto decided he wanted to be flashy. He had placed a hand on his sword, and the moment the snakes came near him, their mouths open in an attempt to bite him, he disappeared. There were several flashes of light before Naruto reappeared just a little bit in front of where he had been, sheathing his sword. When the sword was completely in the sheath, making a light click, the 4 snakes that had been sent after him were suddenly cut into nearly 15 separate pieces. That speed was unbelievable. Enko shouted to herself as she stared at what Naruto had done to her snakes. I think that was as fast as Guy. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu. Akane raised a hand to her mouth and began shooting out several basketball-sized fireballs. Enko began dodging them, jumping from tree to tree in an effort not to get it. It seemed she was too slow, however, as one of the fireballs smashed into her. Enko was blasted back and hit a tree, only to puff into a burst of smoke that revealed a log. Akane jumped into the air just as Enko burst out from under her, kunai in hand. The purple-haired kunoichi tossed the kunai at her and went through several hand seals, kunai kage bunshin no jutsu, kunai shadow clone jutsu. The one kunai soon became 12 kunai, all of them heading for Akane. Said Demonis wasn't too concerned, however. She raised her left arm and swiped it as the sharp pointy throwing weapons came closer. A blaze of fire shot out from her hand and hit the kunai, melting them before they could touch her. Enko had to blink for several seconds as her mind tried to comprehend what had just happened. That second was all Naruto needed to kick her in the back of the head. He came at her again just as Enko managed to right herself. She skidded along the ground and saw him coming in. Sanaijishu, she thrust out her hands and more snakes came out. However, Naruto didn't even bother slowing down as the snakes came in and tried to bite or at least grab him. He just began dodging the snakes, moving across the ground in a slight zigzag pattern. "You'll have to do better than that, sensei," Naruto said as he closed the distance between them, and the two soon found themselves in a taijutsu battle. For her part, Enko was trying to do her best to get some distance from the lightning-quick genin. It was becoming painfully obvious that these two were above genin level, far above that level. She managed to get away by making a Tsuchi Bunshin, mud clone, and using it in conjunction with a Karuimi to act as a minor distraction. "Alright, kiddies," Enko shouted as she sped through several hand seals. "I've been going too easy on you, it seems. Let's see how you hand this. Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning jutsu." Slamming her hands on the ground, Enko was engulfed in a large puff of smoke. Both Naruto and Akane were soon forced to jump away as a giant 60-foot-long snake lunged out of the smoke with its fangs extended. As the snake crashed through a tree near their previous position, Akane turned her head to look at Naruto. "Do you want this one? Or should I take it?" she asked. "Go ahead," Naruto said, rolling his eyes. "I know you want to be the one who takes Big Bad and Scaly out. You're so good to me," Akane cooed before she ran up to the snake. Her movements were so fast that one moment she was standing next to Naruto, then the next second she right next to the snake, her fist pulled back with a large, white fire on it. "Kitsune Bai, Kabushi, Fox Fire, Fist," she shouted as a warning, giving Enko just enough time to jump off of the snake's head before it was engulfed in a large pillar of white fire. "What the fuck is going on?" Enko screamed inside of her mind as she watched her summon go back to the summoning world with severe burns on it. That kind of power is ridiculous. How can a couple of brats have this kind of strength? It was in her distracted state that she felt an arm wrap around her shoulder and the tip of a kunai pointed at her jugular. "When you're as awesome as we are, this kind of stuff just comes naturally, sensei." Turning her head, Enko saw Naruto grinning at her. "So, do we pass?" asked Akane as she walked up to the two, dusting off her hands. "Yes, you pass," Enko said, sounding slightly dazed. Her mind was still in the process of trying to comprehend just what had happened during what should have been a very simple test. "Meet me here at She blinked a few times as her eyes began to survey the utterly destroyed training ground. "It would take the cleaning crew some time to fix this. Meet me at Training Ground 42 at 7 am tomorrow." Excellent. Naruto said as he walked over to Akane, without breaking stride scooped the beautiful red head up into his arms. We'll see you tomorrow, sensei. Akane-kan and I need to go have some celebratory sex. See ya. The two disappeared within a sunshin, leaving a blushing Anko behind. It was the morning after Anko had given her exam and Naruto and Akane became genin. The morning was still fairly young, the sun had risen just a little while ago and there still wasn't much in the way of light. Naruto and Akane walked into the training ground that Anko had told them to meet her at. Because it was still so early their sensei wasn't there yet, but that didn't bother the pair. Seems like we're a tad early, Akane said, giving her mate a small, innocuous smile. What should we do? Naruto chuckled, I'm sure we'll think of something. Leading her over to one of the trees, the whiskered blonde sat down and leaned against the trunk. With a grin on her face Akane soon followed suit, straddling his waist. Lifting her left hand the redhead brought it up to her mate's face, where she cupped his cheek and used her thumb to caress his whisker marks. She smirked when she heard a low growl come from his throat. Seems these whiskers are still sensitive, she murmured in a low, sensual voice. Akane pressed her body against his. She leaned her head down while Naruto lifted his up and the two met in a light kiss. Their lips moved in tandem with each other, applying a small amount of pressure to the other's lips. Soon, neither were satisfied with just chaste kisses. Akane opened her mouth to deepen the kiss, letting Naruto slip his tongue inside. She moaned as he caressed the inside of her mouth. When she felt his tongue disappear the redhead pushed her own tongue in his mouth, enjoying the taste of her mate. When they pulled back, their breathing was a little heavier than before and both had lightly flushed faces. Naruto smiled as Akane closed her eyes and rested her head against his, their foreheads and noses just touching. You know, sometimes this still feels like a dream, he admitted. Then it's a good a dream, Akane mumbled before she went back to claiming her mate's lips with her own. They were still enjoying the sensations when a voice knocked them both out of their activities. Don't you two ever keep your hands off of each other? Blinking the two stopped their small make-out session and turned to look at Anko, who had just sunshined, body flicker, onto the training field. They both noticed with a small amount of amusement that the purple-haired jonin had a light blush covering her face, and when she made eye contact with either one of them she would turn her head slightly. Akane grinned as she got a mischievous idea. Not if I can help it, she quipped before leaning down and gave Naruto a passionate open-mouthed kiss so that Anko could see their tongues dueling. Realizing what Akane was trying to do, the blonde's hands went from resting on her hips to her perfectly tight ass where he began to squeeze and massage her cheeks, getting a low, sensual moan from the redhead. Anko's blush flared and she quickly turned away from the scene, grumbling about no good gakis who were too horny for their own good. Both genin snickered a little as Akane stood up and offered a hand to help up Naruto. So, are we going to see Ajisen? Asked the blonde as he stretched his hands over his head and let loose a large yawn. Yep. Anko grinned as she got back into character. She was actually cursing herself now for getting so worked up and embarrassed by what they were doing. She was the one who was supposed to make the genin uncomfortable around her, not the other way around. And she would be damned if she let them continue. Considering how well you two did on your test, I figured you guys don't need much training, so we're going to go and get a nice C-ranked mission for ourselves. Now let's go. Pumping a fist in the air, Anko began to walk off. When they entered the Hokage's office it was an amusing sight. As per usual, Anko kicked the door in the minute she got permission to enter and stood there while striking a pose. Naruto and Akane entered hand in hand, one looked amused and the other had a smirk. Ohio Ajisen/Hokage-sama, came the greeted of two voices. Sarutobi's sweat dropped at the similar quality their voices held. Seeing them now, I'm beginning to think giving those two to Anko wasn't the best idea I've ever had, he thought to himself. Shaking the thoughts away for the moment he greeted them with a smile. Ah, Team 12. Here for you, first mission I take it. That's right, Anko said with a grin. And none of that D-ranked crap you give the other genin, These brats seem good enough to handle a C rank at least. You have no idea, thought Naruto as he watched Sarutobi raise an eyebrow. You do know that's against standard procedure, don't you Anko? Asked Sarutobi, his voice sounding mild, testing. I know that. Anko seemed to have a strong desire to scowl as her facial muscles kept changing. Still, she kept her face in the slight grin she was so well known for, but these two are a lot better than any of the other genin, and their teamwork is already great. They don't need to D-ranks, D-rank missions were actually missions to promote teamwork. They consisted of doing things like mowing and weeding lawns, cleaning out kennels, walking dogs, painting fences and any other myriad of tasks that the villagers had. The missions weren't hard, but they were designed to promote teamwork between squad members. You think so? Asked Sarutobi. Anko gulped a little at the hard look he was giving her but stood firm and nodded. Then the old Hokage surprised her by smiling. Good. The purple-haired woman relaxed as the Sandaime began to leaf through some of the scrolls, searching for the one he felt would be best suited for this team. Ah, here we go. He pulled out a scroll and read it for a moment before nodding. There is an outlying farm located several miles outside of Konoha. They special in breeding horses for the daimyo of Hai no Kuni as well as several racing horses. The client is worried that some of the competition may try to poison his horses to eliminate him as a competitor. So it's a protection detail, Naruto stated. That's it exactly. Looks like we've got our mission. Anko turned to her genin. Alright brats, pack for a standard C rank mission and meet me at the north gate in half an hour. Naruto and Akane watched as their Jonin sensei disappeared within a swirl of leaves. See you later, Ajisen. Naruto said as he and Akane disappeared within a burst of white flames, shocking Sarutobi who had to blink several times as if he was not quite sure what he had seen. The old Hokage soon sighed and looked out the window. I'm getting too old for this shit. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Half an hour later Naruto and Akane met up with Anko by the north gate entrance. Alright, the purple-haired Jonin said as she finished eating the last of her dango and was now picking her teeth with the stick they had been skewered to. Before we go I want to see the equipment you have for this mission. It was a standard procedure for all Jonin senseis to look over their genin's equipment, especially on their first C-rank mission. Having the right equipment was a very important facet of being a shinobi, and while some may not think much of it, if you ran out it could easily lead to death. Can we just tell you what we have? When Anko raised an eyebrow at Naruto he decided to elaborate with some visual help. He unstrapped his left kunai pouch and opened it up, making Anko look inside. At first, she saw nothing, no kunai, no shuriken or ninja wire, nothing. She was about to berate him where suddenly her eyes were drawn to several areas that looked like someone had drawn several sets of kanji surrounded by what looked like squiggles. Are those seals? Asked Anko in a mixture of shock and surprise. She looked up at Naruto to see him grinning at her. Yep, he said, reattaching his pouch. I placed them in my pouch so that I can hold more equipment. I figured it would give me the element of surprise, since a standard issue kunai pouch can only carry up to 20 kunai, 50 shuriken, 12 feet of ninja wire, or 200 exploding notes, at any given time, or you can mix those but it always amounts to a similar amount of equipment. This way, I can use 20 kunai, and my enemy will think I'm all out of equipment, then I can surprise him by using more. He had come up with this method of surprise after one of the times he had been raiding a bandit camp. During his battle he had run out of equipment and was forced to use hand-to-hand combat against an enemy ninja who had been better than him. If it hadn't been for Akane letting him use her Yuki he would have lost. Anko worked her mouth several times before she found her voice. That's actually pretty smart. It was actually very smart. She could easily see the benefits of having something like this. So what do you have in those seals? Well, each seal holds a different weapon, Naruto began as he started pointing them out and stating what was in them. I have 100 kunai in this one, 200 shuriken in here, this one has 50 feet of ninja wire, in this one I have 400 explosive notes, the one over here has 20 flashbangs, and the one right next to it has 50 smoke pellets, this one at the bottom holds 10 fold-out Fuma shuriken, and this last one holds 10 hand grenades. Wait, what's a hand grenade? Asked Anko. She had never heard of a hand grenade before. It's a powerful type of explosive, Akane said, bringing the purple-haired Jonin's attention to her. It's a small bomb that can be thrown by hand. The redhead reached into her pouch and called one of the grenades to her hand so she could show it to Anko. The grenade was about the size of a fist, with a notched surface and appeared to be made of some kind of steel. There was a protrusion on one side that had a pin in it. What you do is you pull this pin out. This releases a set of explosive chemicals that take 5 seconds to fully mix, and when they do it causes an unstable reaction and they explode. Akane chuckled at seeing Anko's dumbfounded expression. These are about 5 times more powerful than an explosive note. Really? Anko was nearly drooling at the thought of what she could do with something like that. And where can I get some of those? Nowhere, said Naruto. I don't think there's a single store that sells them. Then how did you get them? Asked Anko with a frown. That should be obvious, Akane said. We made them. Anko started making choking noises and the demonic couple snickered at her. When the purple-haired Jonin had finally managed to get a hold of herself, she looked at the two with pleading eyes. Do you think we can make some for you, sensei? Naruto interrupted, already knowing what she was going to ask. You'll have to buy the supplies though, making hand grenades aren't cheap. I suppose that's fine, Anko said, more than willing to pay for the materials if those grenades really were as good as they said. Right, so your pack seems to be well over what you actually need, but you know what they say, better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. Anyways, I take you have the same combination. Akane nodded and Anko grinned. Right, then let's move out. I want to be at the farm before nightfall. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. The journey wasn't that long, thanks to Anko being a Jonin and Naruto and Akane being Naruto and Akane, they managed to make it to the special horse breeding farm. It was located on a fairly decent size of property, about 20 acres all told. There were 2 large buildings, a beige-colored house and a red barn house. The team of 3 walked up to the house where Anko proceeded to knock on the door. It was a few minutes before the door opened and a young woman with black hair and green eyes, wearing a pair of faded jeans and blouse combo with an off-white collared shirt opened it. Ah, you must be the Konoha ninja my husband hired, she said in a pleasant voice as a smile came to her face. She opened the door more fully and stood aside. Won't you please come in? Thank you, ma'am, Anko said, kowtowing her usual sarcasm to be respectful since they were speaking with the client, wife of the client, but it amounted to the same thing. While the 3 ninja were observing the nice house, the woman said, why don't you all sit down while I go get my husband? She left the 3 of them, walking through a set of double doors that Naruto noticed led to a hallway. This place is pretty nice, Naruto commented as he took a look around before sitting on the couch. Not a moment later Akane sat down next to him. Out of instinct the whiskered blonde opened his arm nearest his mate so that she could snuggle up next to him, an act which she took great pleasure in doing. Naruto smiled as his mate rested her head on his shoulders. Every time they were close like this he was always reminded of how lucky he was. I agree, this house isn't bad, Akane said as she yawned, though it's got nothing on our apartment. Her added thoughts forced Naruto to hold back a snort of laughter. Yes, well, not many people are talented in sealing and the like. Do you two always have to do that? Asked Anko with a frown as she looked at the 2. Seriously, you 2 are always all over each other whenever I see you. Which has been all of like 2 days since we've actually met sensei, Naruto shot back. It's not like we've known each other that long. You're not jealous, are you sensei? Asked Akane with a mischievous grin on her face. PSH, no, Anko did her best to keep the light tint of pinks off of her cheeks, but from the widening of Akane's grin and the smirk that Naruto wore she wasn't as successful as she had hoped. You know, if you're jealous you could always ask us if you could join, Anko-sensei, Akane said using what Naruto had dubbed her sexy nosebleed voice several years back. It was the kind of voice that could, and has, caused many a nosebleed before. Why would I even think about getting with a couple of brats like you? Anko stuttered slightly, inwardly cursing. She was not used to actually getting embarrassed by other people, it was usually the other way around. That these two genin could cause her to blush was bothersome. Because the sex is great? Akane said with a shrug of her shoulders. Anko felt her face heat up even more and Akane knew she was close to possibly breaking her sensei. She smiled, it was always so fun teasing people. Opening her mouth, she was about to give one more comment to see if she could push the purple-haired Jonin a little further when the double doors opened again. The three Konoha ninja looked over to see the woman walk in with a man 2 heads taller than her. Where the woman was wearing a style of clothing designed more for the outdoors, the man was wearing a dark blue business suit. He had dark brown eyes and brown hair with a shock of gray in it, giving him a distinguished look. "I would like to thank you for coming," the man said as he sat down on a couch on the opposite side of where Naruto and Akane were sitting. The woman moved through another door and Naruto wondered where she was going. "It's no problem," Anko said from where she sat, leaning forward in her seat with her elbows resting on her knees. "Why don't we get down to business so that we can help you protect whatever it is you need protecting?" "Yes, of course," the man said as the woman came back in with a tree and some tea. "Tea?" she asked, looking at the three Konoha ninja. Anko shook her head negatively, however Naruto and Akane both decided to grab a cup as they thanked the woman, who sat down next to the man. "My name is Kenzo Gantz," the man said by way of introduction, "and this is my wife, Kyotomi." "I'm Anko," Anko said cheerfully, "the redhead is Akane, and the blonde with whiskers is Naruto." "A pleasure to meet you," Kenzo said, "now on to why I requested Konoha Shinobi. A while ago I got commissioned by Fire Daimyo-sama to bred a horse for his eldest daughter. The horse we have bred for her is easily our best." "And you think someone is going to steal it, or kill it?" asked Anko. That sort of thing actually wasn't unheard of. In fact, there had been something similar that happened in Konoha during a dog breeding contest. One of the civilian breeders had attempted to poison an Inuzuka dog by giving them a shot filled with a diseased pathogen that would turn the dog feral. Thankfully the Inuzuka clan guards their dogs zealously, like they were a part of their family, and the person was caught before the deed could be committed. "We don't know that for sure," Kenzo replied, "but all the same we thought it was better safe than sorry." "That's good thinking," Naruto said with a smirk, almost ninja-like I would say. The joke caused a mild snort from Anko and a giggle from Akane. Kenzo seemed to take this as a compliment as he grinned while the woman had an amused smile. "Well, it is getting pretty late," Kenzo said, "I have 3 rooms set up for you. I'm not sure how you ninja work, but I expect the horse to have some form of protection at all times." "Don't worry," Anko said standing up, "we'll work out shifts so your horse can be under constant guard." "Very well," Kenzo replied. Turning to look at Kyotomi he said, "Why don't you show them to their rooms?" Of course, Kyotomi stood up and motioned for the 3 to follow her. She led them through the double doors and up a set of stairs, which led to a hallway that had doors lining it. Turning, the woman looked at the 3 and said, "The first door on your left belongs to you, and Kosen, Akane-san and Naruto-san have the 2 right next it. They can choose which one they want to sleep in." "Oh, don't concern yourself with getting us 2 rooms, Akane said with a dismissive wave of her hand, "Naruto and I always sleep together anyways." The statement caused Anko to facepalm while Kyotomi blushed. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Coming up with a method for guarding Kenzo's prized horse was much easier than Anko anticipated. Thanks to Naruto's ability with seals, he was able to create a Goten Hakuku Fuin, 5-point detection seal, a seal where 5 tags were spread out 30 meters from each other to form the shape of a pentagon. It created a detection line around the house and farm. Anyone who passed through it was detected via a seal Naruto had drawn on Anko's arm. This would give them all an advanced warning if someone was sneaking in at night, though Naruto also agreed to have some Kage Bunshin stand guard at night as added protection. During the day Anko decided that Akane would scout the forest. The 2 had told her of the redhead sensor ability, making it sound like a bloodline and not a demonic trait that she had. The Jonin had been pretty ecstatic to realize she had someone with sensor capabilities, which was a very rare trait for humans. Akane had agreed that it would be a good idea for her to scout the surrounding forest, though in truth she just wanted a chance to roam around in her fox form for a while, something she couldn't really do in Konoha for obvious reasons. As a last thought, Enko decided that she would guard their client. It wasn't a part of the job description, but she figured that the competition may just try to take them out instead of the horse. After everyone had their assignments and Naruto had finished setting up the seals and making his Kage Bunshin, the 3 Konoha ninja went to bed. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Sarutobi was doing his best to enjoy a peaceful day when the door to his office opened and in walked 3 people he had suspected, but hoped he wouldn't see. "Ah, Dasnu, Hamura, Koharu, what brings you 3 here today?" he said in a congenial voice, keeping any emotions he might be feeling off of his face. As the spokesperson for the 3 of them, Danzu stepped forward, his cane lightly tapping on the floor before he stopped in front of the Hokage's desk. "There have been some, rather disturbing rumors," he started. His face was a mask that held no emotion and betrayed nothing. "Of course, that could have just been because of the bandages. We were hoping you would be able to shed some light on these rumors and hopefully ease our minds that these are in fact just rumors." "Well, what is it you want to know?" asked Sarutobi. "We have heard some reports that Mitarashi-san is the Jonin sensei for one." "Naruto Uzumaki," Danzu said. "As you know, this concerns us because Mitarashi-san is not stable and is a threat risk to the village." "I see," Sarutobi replied mildly. "Are you saying you don't trust my judgment?" Koharu actually paled at the tone of voice. She had only heard it once. 7 years ago, after Naruto had been nearly killed, Sarutobi had managed to get information that the civilian council had been at least partially responsible for keeping him in that meeting during that time. The old man had actually taken action against those who did it, personally executing each one of them during the next council meeting. She quickly moved to defend their words. "Not at all, Hokage-sama. We are just concerned that Uzumaki-san may be manipulated into betraying the village. And Kosen has my complete trust," Sarutobi said in a voice that could cut through steel and eyes that froze all 3, even Danzu in place. It was times like these that the 3 were reminded that this man was called the Kami no Shinobi for a reason. Unlike some people I could name, he looked at all 3 of them, letting them know who he was talking about. Danzu, realizing they weren't going to get anywhere with this, decided to change subjects. "What's this I hear about a young girl, Akane, if I remember, becoming a genin without going to the academy?" "She is a young girl who has been living with Naruto-kun in secret for several years," Sarutobi said. "They came to me to see if she could be tested to become a genin with him. I decided to humor them and test her myself. She proved to be quite talented, around Chunin level. I decided having her as a shinobi for the village would prove beneficial. But, to have her with that boy. That boy has a name." Sarutobi saturated the air with his killing intent. Koharu and Hamura, who were no longer shinobi and had not trained in decades, were unable to deal with the killing intent. Danzu could deal with it better, but it was still enough to make his knees weaken. "And thanks to some of the people in this village, she is the only person Naruto-kun truly trusts. Even I don't have his full trust, seeing as he kept all of his abilities hidden from me. By having Akane as a shinobi of Konoha, I can keep Naruto-kun from leaving the village." Sarutobi withheld a smirk as he said these words. He let up his killing intent and said, "After all, if he left the village then we would be out of 1 Jinchuriki. And if he went to another village, say Kumo, where their Jinchuriki are treated as guardians and heroes." He trailed off when the elders, even Danzu, paled at the thought of Kumo getting another Jinchuriki in their grasp. They already had 2, and 1, the Raikage's brother was said to be considered the perfect host. If they got Naruto, Kumo could easily become the most powerful of the 5 great nations. "I trust one made my point," Sarutobi said. The 3 said nothing, but he knew that he had won this battle. "You 3 are dismissed." Story of the 10-tailed wolf. It was early the next morning and Naruto woke up to a very pleasant sensation on his lips. Opening his eyes he saw Akane standing over him with a grin, "Morning Narakan." She leaned back down and gave him another kiss. "Morning my Beneheim," Naruto mumbled as his arms found themselves wrapping around Akane's slender waist. He enjoyed the feel of her lips against and opened his mouth so her tongue could slip in, then closed his own mouth to lightly suck on it, causing the red head on top of him to moan. They enjoyed the taste of each other for a few more minutes before pulling back. "That's a pleasant way to wake up," he gave Akane a smile while she gave him an impish grin. "You wanna know what's even better than waking up to that?" asked Akane as she pressed her bare chest against his. At Naruto's inquiring gaze she said, "Hopping into the shower with me so we can help each other get nice, and, clean." That was all the motivation Naruto needed as he scooped Akane into his arms and ran into the restroom that was attached to their bedroom. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. The pair came downstairs, their hair still wet from taking a shower, and sat down at a table in the dining room where their sensei was already located. "Good morning Gakis," the purple-haired Kunoichi said with a cheerful grin as she played with the kunai in her hands. "Good morning Anko-sensei," Naruto greeted while Akane mumbled out her own greeted, laying her head on Naruto's shoulder. A few minutes later Kayatami came out of the kitchen and set down a hot plate of pancakes. "These look delicious," the blonde said as he forked several onto Akane's plate and nearly twice as much onto his own. "Thank you Kayatami-san," he told the woman who gave him a kind smile. "You're most welcome Naruto-san," she said, "I'll be right back to get you some juice." "Do you have any sake?" asked Anko, getting 3 stares, 2 from her students and a third from Kayatami. "What?" she said defensively. "Really sensei? Sake? In the morning?" asked Naruto. Anko huffed and crossed her arms, "I can't start my day without my morning sake." "I understand where you're coming from perfectly," Akane said with a nod. Anko smiled, glad to know that at least one person understood her need for sake. It was bad enough that they didn't have any dango here. The redhead continued on as if oblivious to her thoughts, "It's sort of like how Narakan and I need our morning sex to get through the day." Naruto snorted while Anko began choking on the food she had just taken a bite out of and Kayatami flushed from her head to her feet. Noticing this the vixen just smiled innocently and asked, "What?" Anko glared at her but all that served to do was make Akane's smirk grow larger. The Jonin sighed before trying to change topics, "So you two know what your jobs are?" "Of course," Naruto said after he finished swallowing his food. "I'm going to be in the farmhouse protecting the horse, and Akane is going to be checking the surrounding forests. Meanwhile, you'll be protecting the client just in case someone decides to take them out instead." "Glad to know you're on top of things," Anko nodded approvingly. "That's not all he gets on top of," Akane quipped innocently, making Anko face palm and wonder if she had done something in her past life to deserve having to listen to the redhead's innuendo-laced comments. Perhaps she had been some kind of pervert in her past life. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Guard duty was in a single word, boring. Naruto sighed as he patrolled around the farmhouse. He had never been so bored in his life. All throughout the blonde's young life he had always been doing something. During his younger years it was getting chased by mobs and trying to find some way to get enough food to live the next day. After he had met Akane it was his training, and during that time he had never had a dull moment. Now however, he was so terribly bored. "You know I can feel all of your angst from here," Akane's voice shot through his mind. "It's not angst," Naruto said defensively, "I'm just bored. There is absolutely nothing to do." He made another sweep around the barn and scowled, "At least you get to enjoy yourself in the forest. I'm stuck here walking around in circles." Laughter echoed through his mind and his scowl increased. "Well, I guess I'll just have to do something tonight in order to make you feel better. You know I brought that chocolate-covered thong needed for the 5th scene in Ika Ika Paradise. If you wanted we could." "Have I ever told you I love you?" asked Naruto. His answer was a giggle, "You have, and it's always nice to hear. However, I prefer you to show me how much you love me. Preferably while we're in bed." Just wait until tonight and I'll show you by filling. Naruto stopped talking when he felt his seals being breached. Sorry Akane-kan, but someone just stepped through my seal. We'll continue this later tonight. Okay, bye. Naruto cut contact with Akane as he placed a hand on the seal he had drawn on his arm. Channeling some chakra through it, he felt the seal respond to his chakra. He took his hand off and looked at the seal, which was an Uzumaki swirl that held a thick line with a point inside of it. Currently that point was facing the opposite direction he was at, meaning whoever had breached the seal was east of him. Taking off in that direction, Naruto entered the farm and hid in one of the stables. A few minutes later, a little girl who looked like a miniature of Kyotomi entered and walked up to the prize horse that would be given to the fire daimyo's daughter. Figuring that this was the daughter of Kenzo and Kyotomi, Naruto came out of his hiding spot and moved over to where the girl was petting the horse. "What are you doing here?" he asked, getting a startled squeak from the girl who fell on her butt. "Ouchie," the girl rubbed her rear before getting up and turning to glare at him. Now that he was closer, Naruto noted that she was fairly young, probably around 8 or 9. "Who are you?" she asked in a slightly rude and angry tone. "Naruto Uzumaki," the blonde replied, "I'm one of the ninja your father hired to guard this horse." And just like that, the girl's entire demeanor changed upon hearing he was a ninja. "Really?" Naruto was forced to take a step back as the girl got right up in his face with stars in her eyes. "That's so cool. How long have you been a ninja? Have you been on a lot of missions? Have you ever saved a princess? Fought any bad guys? Tell me. Naruto opened his mouth to try and talk, but the girl didn't even give him a chance as she began yammering away about how cool ninja were and how she wished she could be a ninja. He sighed, either this girl really loved ninja, or she was bipolar or something, because Naruto had never seen someone switch from angry that fast. No, that wasn't quite true. Mei was capable of doing that with AO, but she was also a high-level ninja and allowed to have her quirks. This was a kid. "You know, if you keep talking I won't be able to tell you any cool stories," Naruto interrupted the girl, who by now had switched from stating how cool ninja were, to this one time she had met a samurai. The girl definitely some kind of chatterbox disease or something. She looked up at him, blinking a little bit before shouting, "So then tell me a story. A really cool one too. With bad guys and a princess." "Well." Naruto sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know if I have one about a princess, but I could tell you about the famous Uzumaki clan, a powerful clan of ninja that lived on an island surrounded by whirlpools. Story of the 10-tailed wolf." If Akane's fox form was capable of smiling, she no doubt would have. When she was in this form she was much more comfortable when surrounded by nature, sort of how most animals felt in their natural habitat. Having just gotten out of the seal a few days ago, she had not actually spent any time in her kitsune form. Even if she had been given the time, she would not have been able to. Konoha had a well-known hatred of foxes thanks to her attack 12 years ago. No doubt they would have tried to kill her if she were spotted. While she doubted anyone could ever catch her, she didn't want to cause possible problems for Naruto. Just as she was walking around a bush, Akane paused. She could hear voices several dozen feet away from her. Knowing that no one aside from the family who had hired them lived anywhere near here, she began to move stealthily towards the voices, finding a nice bush to hide under. As she looked over, Akane saw 3 men huddled together. The first man was rather tall, about 7 foot even if Akane had to guess. He was also very skinny, with silvery gray hair that went a little past his shoulders and odd silver eyes that looked glassy, as if he had spent the last 12 hours getting high. He was wearing a white button-up shirt with black pants and some odd-looking headgear that reminded her of the Nidames. Just to that guy's left was another man. He was rather squat, standing at about 4 foot 3 inches, and was much more round than the other guy. His outfit consisted of a midnight blue business suit, one of the many exports that had come from the western continent. The last guy was about as average as one could get, average height and weight, plain brown hair and eyes. He was wearing a pair of plain black pants and a long-sleeve shirt with black open-toed sandals. He was just one of those people that were so plain and average looking that they usually got lost in the crowd. Knowing it was unlikely they were just wandering and got lost, Akane moved in closer and cast an kitsune illusion that made her invisible as she listened in. "This is the place, right, Mabui?" asked the tall one. Akane decided to call him Scarecrow. "Yes, this is the place," said the fat one, Mabui if she had to guess, who had a surprisingly deep voice. Akane decided she would call him Fat Ass since it fit him much better than his name, at least she thought so. "So all we have to do is steal some stupid horse, right?" asked the last member, the average-looking one. After a moment's thought the redhead decided to call him Joe. "Yes, but we need to come up with a plan," said Fat Ass. "I saw some girl wearing a headband, meaning there are ninja guarding the place." "And ninja," shouted Scarecrow. The man seemed to shake when Fat Ass mentioned there were ninja. Were Akane in her human form she would have laughed at how terrified the man looked. "Maybe we should just forget about the whole thing, to me ninja are bad news." "Don't be such a coward," said Joe. "We may not be ninja but we're still stronger than most people and I have a few ninjutsu up my sleeve. Besides, ninja aren't invincible," and Mabui said it was just a girl. The average-looking man turned to Mabui. "So what did this girl look like?" "Well, she had red hair," Fat Ass started, "about this tall and had the most luscious curves I've ever seen. A real babe." The man licked his lips, causing Akane to shudder in disgust at the lecherous look on the man's face. She hated the lecherous stares men gave her, which was odd considering how she loved to dress, but that was only for her Narakan. "Maybe we should see if we can't capture her as well. It would be nice to have some fun with a female." "We both know no female would touch you," Scarecrow said. "Who said she had to be willing?" shot back Fat Ass. "We just knock her out, tie her up and—" By this time Akane had stopped listening as rage overtook her. These low-life, despicable humans actually had the gall to talk about raping her. Softly growling she moved over to them, transformed into her human form and disengaged her invisibility illusion. "Who were you three planning on having fun with now?" she asked in a sugar sweat "I'm going to castrate you" voice. The three men turned to see her with a smile that was just as sweat and deadly as her voice. All three shivered at that smile. There was just something wrong about it. Well. Scarecrow tried to say, odd since he seemed to be the most afraid. The other two looked like they had shit themselves. Of course, it could have something to do with the killing intent Akane was starting to emit. Akane turned her smile into a wide grin as she cracked her knuckles. Wrong answer. "Story of the 10-tailed wolf." "So what did you do to them, Onaikan?" asked the little girl, whose name he had learned was Akisha. Currently said little girl was riding atop of Naruto's shoulders as the blonde made his way inside now that the day was over. "Well, I did what all good ninja would do, of course. I beat them up and rescued my squad," Naruto said with a large grin. He had been telling her stories about some of the things he had seen and done within the past several years. At the moment his story was about one of the missions he had gone on with AO, an infiltration mission into enemy territory. Of course he was embellishing a little, the squad hadn't belonged to him after all. But there was no need to tell Akisha that. They walked into the house where Anko was sitting with Kyotomi and talking about something. When he entered they both looked up and the brown-haired woman's eyes seemed to hold relief at seeing them. "There you are, Akishikan," she said as she walked over to them. "I've been looking all over for you. Do you know how worried I've been?" Akisha started sniffling at her mother's scolding tone, and Naruto decided to butt in before the girl could start to cry. "It's my fault she wasn't around Kyotomi-san," he said, bringing her attention to him. "I saw her petting the horse and we got to talking. I was telling her some stories and I guess I forgot about the time." Kyotomi seemed to glare at him for a second before sighing. "She's always loved ninja." As if to prove her point Akisha began to clap her hands excitedly. "Ninja. Ninja." Kyotomi shook her head at how hyper her little girl got at the thought of ninja. A smile came unbidden to her face. Kyotomi was just about to open her mouth when the door slammed open. Everyone turned to see Akane, who looked like she was glaring at everything and nothing at the same time, covered in blood. She didn't even acknowledge them as she stalked past everyone, even Naruto, as they stared at her with wide eyes. When the red head was out of sight and her footsteps could be heard stomping up the stairs, Anko turned to Naruto and asked, "What the hell is up with her?" She ignored Kyotomi's glare at her use of a curse word in front of a child as she looked at Naruto, eyebrow raised in a silent question. "I'm not sure," Naruto said with a sigh, "but I'm going to find out." He walked up the stairs and made his way to his door, opened it and entered. As he looked around the room, the first thing he noticed was that Akane was not there, though judging by the sound of the shower running she was likely in the shower. The second thing he noticed were the bloody clothes she had strewn about the floor. Naruto sniffed the air, using Yuki to enhance his senses. The blood on the clothes wasn't Akane's, not that he ever expected her of all beings to actually get hurt. Though he was slightly surprised to note that the blood smelled of an unfamiliar human. That caused a mild amount of curiosity. Very few humans traveled this way and most wouldn't be this far out in the forest unless they were lost or coming here with a specific purpose. The blonde eyed the clothes for a moment longer before heading towards the bathroom. He slipped in quietly and noted that Akane had turned the water's heat up as the entire room was being filled with steam. The curtain to the shower was raised and Naruto could see the outline of the red head, who was furiously scrubbing herself and mumbling curses. He couldn't be 100% sure what she was saying since her words were jumbled together, but the words he had caught were, pigs, sexists, cocksuckers, and the ever-popular, motherfucking assholes. Quietly chuckling to himself, Naruto got out of his clothes, reverted to his true form and slipped into the shower. The whisker. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. This is Raven Sage signing off.